I've come to the realization that there are actually two timelines in One Piece: before Ace and after Ace. And honestly, you determining and understanding this will define how much you enjoy this anime. After 2 years, I have finally caught up to One Piece just in time to enjoy the new season. It has been a crazy journey filled with a lot of hardships, and it took a lot of determination, I'm not gonna lie, to get to this point. There were times where I wanted to quit. Sometimes I was just like, yo, I'm done with One Piece. Like, I can't believe people are going through this. But finally, I was able to make it. And I'm glad I did, to be honest. If you're looking to take on this journey, I think that the one thing that will really help is for you to have other animes on deck that you can use when you need a break from One Piece. And honestly, that's what I did sometimes when I had watched maybe a couple of seasons. I'm like, oh, I'm all One Pieced out. And then I would go to like Dr. Stone or something else, and I would watch a season of that and then get right back into it. And I think like that's why, it took me as long as it did. But I think like that's the healthier way to do it, to be honest. Because if you just like cram through everything, I don't think you're going to enjoy it as much. All right, so let's talk about the craziest change that I noticed in watching One Piece from beginning, not to end, but up until now. And that is this change that happens before Ace and after Ace, where at the beginning of One Piece, it really is very whimsical. It's all about fun. It's all about, man, we're going to go on this grand adventure and we're going to see what we discover, right? The world is our oyster, and that's really the feel that you get. And that's what you see in a lot of the interactions. Is a lot of fun. Although it has a serious moment and it's like heartfelt, it was still very lighthearted. And after Ace, what you notice is that it really does get a little bit more serious. We've established a lot more of the world, and we're also seeing a lot more goals that are in front of us, right? Meaning the Straw Crew. And you see that now a lot of these different goals and things that are happening within the world are determining, where we go next. Versus at the beginning, it was more of hey, let's just go on this adventure, right? Once they start really solidifying like the celestial dragons and the government and what's going on there, it really does take a different shift to this entire anime, where a lot of the adventures and the things that we're doing are way more targeted. And honestly, it's sometimes you do miss the more like, hey, let's just go to this place and let's have some fun. But at the same time, like, I get it. Like, at some point, you have to have somewhere that you're actually going for the story to continue to captivate you. And as I was thinking about it, it really makes you, it really made me wonder, like, what's the difference between like One Piece and like Dragon Ball Z, for example, where, and what I was thinking about is that you really feel like One Piece kind of grew up with its audience, where Dragon Ball Z didn't. It kind of stayed with the same formula, the same thing. Whereas One Piece, I think that for those of you, because I did watch some of One Piece when it was first airing, and I did make it to like 200 to 300 episodes once upon a time, when it was, in its early stages. So I really do feel that, for me, I would have been like a teenager. I'm in my 30s now, but you really do see the formatting, the characters, and even the way that the story's being told, like, grow with its audience. And I think that honestly, that's a good thing, because that's what Dragon Ball Z, for example, I think it fails a bit, where it didn't quite grow up with its audience, and instead it's relying on the same formula, and it's more relying on new watchers that are around the same age when we first started watching. Whereas with One Piece, the people that are going to be getting the most out of it are those that have been keeping up with the anime, and now you're seeing a lot more mature themes that are happening within the story. By the way, let me know what you think about this. Do you feel the same way, that for those of you that are fans, that One Piece grew up with you? I think one final point that I'll make on this is that one of the glaring points of this is that in the new season, right before Wano ended, they hinted at Luffy having an actual reason why he wants to be king of the pirates, whereas, you know, for so many seasons from the beginning almost up until now, there wasn't really a reason behind it. So it's kind of even cool to see that, man, so there is some type of ulterior motive to Luffy wanting to be king of the pirates, besides him just thinking it's a cool thing to be. So I'm looking forward to finding out what that is, right? All right. So another thing that we have to talk about that I noticed was that the fighting changes quite a bit. I think that at the beginning, especially with Luffy, the fighting is more creative, and it's more creative in the sense of how he uses his powers and his elasticity, if you will. You do see a lot more risks being taken in the way that he fights, which I think at that time was pretty fun, and honestly, it was unique enough to really catch your attention, because before this there was just a lot of like power leveling, right? And that's how animes attracted you to be captivated by a fight, whereas for Luffy it was more so the creativity behind how he fought that really drove you to want to see more of this dude in action. And obviously, with the going of the times, we've seen that the animation has just gotten extremely better. I mean, dude, you look at how Wano looks compared to, or even Egghead with the fight that he did with the cheetah, dude. Like, that is like movie level stuff, and we really haven't seen animation like that from One Piece since the beginning, if I'm being honest. So it's obviously nice to see that, you know, the storytelling changed with the times and also did the animation for the better. One thing though that I think changed for the worse is the way that they animate the fights. What do I mean by this? At the beginning, I really did feel like the fighting was a little bit more focused. You had like one or two fights going at the same time, and they gave plenty of time for one fight to develop before they cut to the next one. Especially with Wano, not so much with the Newegg fight between Luffy and the cheetah guy. I'm forgetting his name, but in Wano, man, it was so tiring to just go back and forth between Zoro, Sanji, and Luffy. And what was frustrating about that fight is that it just, I kid you not, probably like 3 minutes it felt, they would just switch to another fight and then another fight, and you never really quite got to a point where you like started enjoying the fight before they cut to the next one. So if there's anything that I wish they change up a little bit, is that they stay a little bit more focused with the fighting, so that we have enough time to enjoy what's happening in each fight before they cut from one scene to another. So the last thing that I do want to go over is how much these characters have changed, and I want to focus on a few of them that, at least in my opinion, I've seen the most change. I think one of them for sure is Nico Robin. Obviously, from when we meet her till now, she was very cold-hearted at the beginning, very emotionless, and now we see a lot more warmth. We see a lot more loyalty from her. We see a lot more emotions from her, and she's really developed into a character that I have grown to appreciate, because she's almost become like a big sister to Luffy. And that character progression I've enjoyed watching quite a bit. Nami is also a good honorable mention here. She went from this really selfish person, even after like Luffy saves her and everything, only thinking about herself, to, you know, she becomes a mother figure, which I never would have thought I would have seen in the Punk Hazard arc there, when she's looking after the kids. That was like so shocking. And even in Wano, man, like, you really see the loyalty in her and that strength within that just came from the loyalty that she has for Luffy. Like, that's been really cool to see. Zoro, in Wano, there's this one scene that, like, I think it got us all choked up, and it got me choked up when I saw it, was when he was fighting and he basically calls out Luffy as his best friend and how he needed to stand up for his best friend. And that was like, bro, like, if anyone has had some good character development, I think Zoro has been, because you're also starting to see his maturity and how he's grown as a leader. He's obviously, Luffy is the captain, but you see him really like analyzing and really putting focus where focus needs to be when it comes to some of the decisions that are getting made. You know, he's even in Newegg, he stays behind to watch the ship because, you know, somebody needs to keep track of all these things. And it's cool to see that Zoro stepping into like that leadership role. And obviously, last but not least, I think Luffy has had a lot of change himself, obviously, with losing his brother. He's still very goofy, but at the same time, we've seen him grow as a leader. He wants to take care of his crew. In Wano, we see how he steps up and basically becomes the leader of all the prisoners that have been enslaved in that town. And they ultimately end up following him because they see the leadership skills that he displays. So I really have, if I can say, one of the best parts of keeping up with this anime is seeing how all of these characters have grown. And I know that like Sanji had his like season, if you will, but at the same time, I don't think like we've seen as much development as maybe, you know, some of the other characters. And the last thing that I do want to share in my experience with One Piece, I think that I'm a little bit more objective than a lot of One Piece fans. I am a fan, but I do know that there are some not so great seasons and some great seasons. Some storytelling that's like, yeah, and some storytelling that's really great when it comes to One Piece. And it really did feel a lot like life. And what I mean by this is that, you know, your life is not just this like trajectory that's always just going up, right? You have a lot of up and downs and, you know, ebbs and flows that happen in your life. And I think that One Piece is a lot like this. Like, they are seasons that are kind of that you're not gonna enjoy as much. Like for me, I felt like Punk Hazard and the arc with Big Mom, were kind of like to me. Like it was okay. It didn't really, honestly, it didn't even feel like One Piece. It felt like a little bit too dark for my taste. And I think that when it came to Wano is when like my motivation to keep watching were renewed, because it felt a lot more like the One Piece that I started watching. So if I were to give you some advice, if you haven't seen One Piece, is that you understand that this is like a long journey, and like life is going to have its ups and downs, but I think ultimately is going to be worth it because of everything that you're going to experience. You're going to experience the good, you're going to experience the bad, you're going to experience the growth, and you're going to see all of these characters develop. And I think that it's been a great journey for me to catch up, and I'm looking forward to actually being caught up while it's being aired. So that's all that I had for you today. Let me know your thoughts. How has your journey in watching One Piece, if you've watched it's been? Do you share some of the same thoughts that I've shared? Where do you agree and where do you disagree? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, just want to remind you that we must persevere. Peace.